Ladies and gentlemen,
Good evening.
Are you ready?
Okay, here we go.
You're listening to the Deal Room Podcast. Join us as we bring you the inside scoop on business sales and acquisitions. Get across trends in the area and hear the industry's best recount their real-life tips, traps, and experiences. Now, here's your host, Joanna Oakey.
Hi, it's Joanna Oakey here, and welcome back to the Deal Room Podcast, a podcast proudly brought to you by our commercial legal practice, Aspect Legal. Now, today we have on the show Michael Field, who is the Sydney partner in EvettField Partners. EvettField Partners are a specialist consulting firm who are all about driving brand and marketing positioning from the perspective of driving top-line revenue in order to increase enterprise value. And in my discussion with Michael today, we really drill into an example of what it looks like from the inside in driving enterprise value. When we look at the experience of Michael in working within an organisation that was preparing for business sale over a fixed 3-year horizon. So in this episode, we drill into what organisations can do, and indeed in this example, what was done within this organisation to drive the end value of the business at exit within an industry that was undergoing aggressive consolidation and a congested market where prices were being forced down and incentives for clients were increasing. So the job was huge to retain and grow existing clients and to acquire new clients, all while keeping a laser-like focus on driving increased profitability. So in this episode, we walk through the example of how this was done and how the business became the largest player in Australia in its key categories, eventually selling for 12 times EBITDA, having achieved an EBITDA margin that was at least 50% higher than its major competitors. So not only do we walk through what was done to ready the business for sale, we also look at the key insights and takeaways for business owners to be mindful of as they're growing their business. This is a really great episode, even if I do say so myself. So buckle in, because here we go. Michael, I just want to say a massive thank you for joining us on the Deal Room podcast today.
Oh, thank you for the invite. I'm delighted to be here. Thanks so much for the opportunity to speak today.
Well, I'm really interested in digging into this story today, because I think it will be of a lot of interest to our listeners. But before we do that, let's step back one step and talk about, I guess, the title of this podcast, Driving Enterprise Value. Why, in a nutshell, why are we talking about this topic today? Why is this something that is dear to your heart?
We work with a lot of private businesses, family-owned businesses, and as you appreciate, these people have invested many years of their lives into a business. At a personal level, they would have made commitments and promises to their partners and family around, this is worth it, we're going to do this, it's going to be, it's going to pay off for us.
Yeah.
They put an enormous amount of discretionary effort over and above the normal effort of an employee. And it's our view that they deserve their payday. They deserve to be rewarded properly for the effort that they put into building an enterprise. They take on the risk, they employ staff, they invest in R&D. There's so much that the business owner takes on. And it's our view that if they lose sight of why they set out to build that enterprise, and outside of it, keeping them, gainfully employed for whatever period of time they grow the business, most owners, in our experience, are enormously disappointed with the valuation that they get for their business when they're ready to sell.
And yeah, I mean, look, this is just a topic, and for those of you who are regular listeners to the Deal Room, you'll know that it's a topic that comes up again and again and again, because it's such an issue. It's such an issue in the market. And I think what I see a lot of is business owners spending a lot of time focused on the concept of growth without the concept of what creates saleable value at the end of the day, without really thinking through to that until it's sort of this last minute afterthought, perhaps right at the end when they're getting really close to exit and they have to. Is that your experience as well?
Yes, it is, and it's understandable why. Like the dimensions of the character of a startup business, the entrepreneur who's prepared to dive in. When you're in the early stages of growing a business, any revenue is good revenue. So you don't have a detailed view of ideal customer. You don't have a detailed view of optimum product set. You're really just trying to get the cash register ringing. And what then happens is that at a cultural level tends to permeate the business as it grows. And that might be great when you're going from, I don't know, say 1 to 2 million or something like that. And you just get on the phone, call people, make sales happen. But once you get into that 3 to 5 million space and you might be geographically expanding and these sorts of things, the discipline that you have to have around where to focus your effort and what competitive assets you need to build is often overlooked. So the mindset of any revenue is good revenue happens, and there's no analysis of the profitability of different product lines. There's no analysis of marketing expenditure. It all just happens, and without. And I'm not saying that they don't put effort into it. I'm just saying that the right type of thinking isn't applied to it to really focus on, is this actually creating value? Are we actually building value in this asset? And if we took away our emotional connection to the business, if this was viewed by a dispassionate, third party who was looking to either invest in this business or acquire the business, would they value the same things that you're valuing? And it's a fairly brutal lens, but it's a good lens to look through if you want to understand how to drive enterprise value and how to create value in a business.
So then what I'd really like to do now is drive into this experience, this case study of your experience at the coalface of working inside an organisation as you're creating enterprise value growth and change. So maybe why don't you give us a little bit of a background of the organisation and how you came to be there and what the issue was as you started in this organisation?
Sure. It's the origin story actually of the EvettField business is that my business partner, Mike Evett, was the chief executive officer of a large business services organisation. That business was previously a listed business that got delisted by a private equity firm, and a range of decisions were made around how to drive growth and set a deadline for that sale. So I was recruited in a marketing and strategy role, reporting to Mike Evett, who was the CEO, and there were quite a number of things that were obvious to us. One of those is that the market, in terms of competitors, they were all focusing on very, very large clients. They were elephant hunting. Elephant hunting has its benefits, but it's a long sales cycle. The margins were much lower, and we started by just trying to understand market size and contestable market. There's a much smaller number of very large players in terms of customers who everyone was competing for, which just drove price down and made winning that business so much more difficult. And through a market segmentation and market sizing exercise, we really discovered that the volume of revenue available in the small to medium market was massively larger than the top end of town. Winning the business was, although time consuming, if we could get scale and efficiency in winning that SME business, we would actually get a much better revenue outcome, but more importantly, get a much better profit outcome for the business. So we were able to acquire customers, and we developed systems to do that, but we were able to acquire customers at a very, very low cost of acquisition cost of finding a new customer. The margins that we were able to charge those clients were much higher, and we were able to operate those clients clients every year without any pushback. Whereas in the large end of town, you'd be locked into a price point that might stay for 3 years and you couldn't upgrade it even if petrol prices went up or some other business cost went up. So we were able to materially grow that business. We were growing at a much faster rate than our competitors. We were obtaining much greater margin than our competitors, and to our great surprise, none of them knew how we were doing it. And I must say, that's one of the most fun parts when you're really nailing it in the market and your competitors are just scratching their heads. So, that's the origin story.
And so was that so the recruitment of you into this organisation at the time? So just stepping back through the story, the organisation had was private equity backed.
Correct.
And so there was obviously a period of time, I'm guessing there was a period of time that was given, and there were future exit plans.
That's right.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
And so you came on primarily with the aim of growing enterprise value to sit in line with that future exit plan. Is that the idea?
Absolutely. The brief in the recruitment process was that at the end, once the transaction is concluded, you will no longer have a job. The day we get ink on the paper, you won't get to stay in the business. And I was really comfortable with that. Most of the businesses I'd worked in the past, and most of the roles I'd been in the past, were in businesses that were preparing for some sort of material change, either acquisition or something like that. So, that was the brief. I sort of say it with a bit of humour because I recall the interview where it was made quite clear to me that through the lens of marketing, unless any suggestion that would come forward or any recommendation, unless you could show a straight line to revenue generation and increasing enterprise value, don't bother putting it up.
Right.
Interested in it, and in fact, you'll lose credibility with the board if you put anything up that you cannot demonstrate a direct line to revenue and enterprise value. So it was a beautiful discipline, a beautiful environment to be working in.
And do you think, that right there in what you're talking about right now, the aim with which you were brought into the organisation, right there is the very first difference, I think, between, a really sophisticated and organised organisation versus the owner-led, organisation, the organisation that is still being led by the entrepreneur, as we were talking about before,
yes,
that has started the business.
Yeah, I think so. And it's the clarity of thinking that's required to do that. And you can still do that with tremendous passion and energy. It doesn't need to be a cold and merciless mindset. It's just one that's very, very focused. So you understand what adds value and you understand what doesn't. And you lead the team in the business and you lead the decision making in that business and the thinking in the business to focus on those things. So you still can do incredibly meaningful work. You can actually engage the team at a much higher level because there's a real target you're going for and it's a really interesting, meaningful target. And it forces, and I'm talking outside of the executive here, it forces the other business leaders, departmental leaders and those sorts of things into a new form of thinking. And we think that that's a really valuable thing. If you've ever been part of that process, and I imagine many of the people listening to this podcast have, intellectually it's a very stimulating space to be in. It's not business as usual. It's business with a purpose.
Absolutely. And so what was the outcome then? What was the enterprise value uplift from this change in focus? And then we'll come back to digging into some of these strategies. But let's start with what the end result was due to all these changes.
Sure. Well, I guess the ultimate measure on that was that, in terms of a multiple, it was, sold for a 12 times EBITDA multiple, which was a terrific result for the owners. EBITDA margin was at least 50% higher than that of the major competitors.
Wow.
And the business... I guess the competitive tension that we created around the sale of that business was such that the three people who had the most to gain or lose, the three organisations who had the most to gain or lose by ownership transfer of that business, were all competing for that at a level that produced a fantastic result for the owners. So at the time, that was certainly the largest transaction of its kind in that industry, in that category, the market was sort of quite shocked at the result that we got, but we think it was a good outcome.
Wow. Okay. Fabulous. All right. So then let's reverse engineer this. Let's look at what we did to get to that result, and and just also so that we can couch this. What was the period of time from I guess your entrance to then that exit date?
Sure. It's a 3-year process.
Yeah,
it's a 3-year process to build that a business. I was brought in the later part of the first year of that process to drive the bits that I was focused on. So my engagement was approximately 2 years, but the process had been in play for about 12 months before I was engaged.
Great. Okay. I mean, that's quite a short time frame, isn't it, for the outcomes that were achieved?
Yeah, I think so. And it's one of those things that most people think it's either going to be much longer than that or much shorter than that. But realistically, 3 years gives you enough time to do all of the things that need to be done and actually start to embed and bank the results from the work that you've done. For example, you rationalise IT and operations and these sorts of things, or that you don't really see the benefits of those start to wash through, in maybe 6 to 12 months, where you really start to see that play out. So you need that time to embed the changes, because there was a huge number of structural and operational changes that took place at the same time as we addressed the marketing challenges and the segmentation and customer approach that we took.
Yeah. Okay. Fabulous. All right. So let's go back then. Let's reverse engineer this process. What are the key elements that you worked on that you believe led to the growth and the outcome at exit? And I guess we've talked a little bit about it in terms of the movement from hunting the elephants to looking at the SME market. So, but let's walk through that and any other focus during that time.
The first task in this is actually to get a handle on the true winnable market, the contestable market, the market size, and also market outlook. So the business that we were in was heavily exposed to business records management, which includes paper records in archive boxes being stored in secure off-site locations. And there were many people who were talking about paperless office, for example, at that stage. So there were some market communications around that storage of paper won't continue to grow, that'll be a business that will run out of market. So we did an enormous amount of work on the total number of paper pages that are purchased, like how many boxes of Reflex are actually bought in Australia, and how many of those get thrown into recycling bins, how much paper goes into the shred it bins, how much stays in storage, and really understanding different customer types and how they were engaging with paper management record management, I should say.
And so how did you do that? How did you work out the different customer types and how they were engaging? What was that process?
Sure. One part of the task, and there's quite a number of moving pieces to this, and we may not be able to cover it all, but one piece was to actually get a sense of, from the current a profile of customers, what industry categories do they fall in. So doing a simple task like, say, matching all your customer company names with DUNS numbers so you can match it to an industry code. And then you can start to do some evaluation on an industry by industry basis as to where does volume come from, where does growth come from, where does revenue and profit come from. So out of the, say 2,800 categories or however many industry categories that we were dealing with at the time, there was a specific set of those that actually produced the best result. So what you can start to do, and I'll just go to an implementation example here, is we geared the salespeople differently on different industry categories. So we said, if you win this type of business, it will not contribute in any way towards your bonus. But if you bring this type of business at the same revenue, the same number of boxes, it will contribute to your bonus structure. So we geared the whole organisation in terms of their actions to be responding to the insights that we were finding at the market research level. So that's one example. Once you've got that sort of data and you can work on growth rates by category and volume, storage, revenue, up rates and these sorts of things, it's very easy to build that out into a projection over what the next 3 to 5 years are going to look like. The other thing that it gave us opportunity to do is to knowing the total revenue of our competitors and applying a similar profile model to it, and assuming that they had a similar distribution of clients, which we believe that they did, we were then able to understand market share likelihood by category. So whether or not we were strong in an area where when we looked at the whole market, was that kind of tapped out and not worth pursuing and putting effort in? What were the areas that were rich veins of profitability that were largely unvended either by us or our competitors? So that's an example where you take that kind of strategic thinking and insight and you push that into the business and you operationalize it through a sales strategy.
Okay, I love it. All right. And so we talked about the operationalize element with the sales force, I just love that, the differences in the bonuses that applied. And backtracking, assuming that was on the basis that particular industry segments categories were more profitable than the others. Was that what was driving that different bonus calculation approach?
Yeah, absolutely. That was a category that we saw offered greater volume. It offered higher margins, and we also saw that there was we built specific models. So, for example, small and medium law firms were a good target.
Interesting. So let's use law firms as an example then. How, maybe if we can you dig into that side a little bit more for us?
Sure. Law firms, small and medium law firms, are actually a good example of one of the categories that we considered to be really attractive.
And why? Maybe if you can tell us why.
Yeah, sure. The reasons for that come down to the value of the information inside the boxes that they're storing. So, for example, many small and medium sized law firms will, down in the car park of the building, they'll have a sort of a cage there, and they just load up archive boxes in the cage under the building, or, they load them in a spare office or something like that. Now, the risk of loss of some of the documents inside that, or those documents getting in the wrong hands, is really, really high. It's reputationally a very high risk factor for a law firm, and it's not one that they want to be exposed to, but they might not be aware of that risk. So in terms of creating a value proposition that's meaningful to those small to medium law firms, rather than talking about, box rates and how much per month for storage and these sorts of things, you can have a much more interesting conversation to say, well, how many boxes are you storing on site? If you were locked out of your building for any reason, or the building was on fire or something like that, what's the value of the contents that are gone, and how much business impact would that have on you in terms of you continuing to run your business? So you can start to have conversations that are much more business and risk focused with somebody who understands those things, and then the decision for them to move 100 boxes or 200 boxes, archive boxes into storage that they can recall anytime they want is a very, very easy decision to make. And if you can wrap the right value proposition and sales conversation around that, it's an enormous market. Every suburb has got half a dozen small to medium law firms set up in it. And we saw that as a place that was not as a group of people that were not price sensitive. They understood the risk. They could see the value in freeing up office space and maybe not paying whatever they were paying per square metre for their fourth floor office or something, using that for more valuable pursuits. And the net effect for us is we were able to completely dominate that market. We just took thousands and thousands and thousands of boxes that were actually unvended, so they weren't being serviced by another competitor. They were just sitting in hallways. So that's an example of to say, well, how do you go and unlock revenue that nobody else is getting? And how do you leave your competitors wondering where you got that revenue from and how you managed to do that?
That's such a good example. I absolutely love it. And you talked earlier about assets. I can't remember what you said about it, but when you mentioned it, I really picked up on those words, because I think that was it's a really interesting concept for business. In what sense did the business build, or did you encourage the business to build assets?
Sure. So we were talking earlier about what we'll refer to as competitive assets. So they're assets that are going to continue to create value long after they were built. So, for example, a sophisticated sales strategy is a competitive asset. Most competitors, particularly in that space, the quality of conversation that they were able to have was limited to, how many boxes do you have? How much are you paying per month? We'll transfer them over, at no charge, and we'll pay the exit fees for the other supplier. So they were very price-driven conversations. When you start, once you identify that there's a really rich vein of opportunity in a segment, small to medium law firms, and you understand that they'll respond to a message like risk and certainty better than they will to price per box. And then you actually build that capability into the sales team. You train on that, you reward on that. That's a competitive asset, because you're not just saying, hey guys, go out and get this category. You're saying that's a category we want. Here's the numbers. We actually know the winnable market. We know how much total revenue is available. We know how much we've got. We know how much we want to get. And this is the sales strategy. So we're going to build it, we're going to train to that, and we're going to reward to that. And that way you get delivery of the competitive intent. So what's set at a strategy meeting to say this is what we're going to do, you're actually building those competitive assets and you're measuring against that to make sure that you're delivering on that. So you imagine that across multiple categories, across multiple geographies, multiple tiers in business size that you're pursuing, you get a disproportionately high return on investment, because the whole business is pointed to the things that drive revenue.
Absolutely. And so then I guess out of viewing your experience in this organisation, what would you say are the main takeaways that you think are applicable across the board to organisations that perhaps have a view of exit at some point in their business life?
Sure. The main takeaways are really getting a handle on the hard numbers as somebody else would view them, as opposed to how you would view them. Most organisations believe that they do a better job than their competitors, but that's something that can be measured. Most organisations, unfortunately, rely on fairly generic claims around, product, service, people, quality, etc. And our view is that they should be immediately dismissed as competitive assets. And the reason for that is that if you look at the 2 or 3 websites of your nearest competitors, they will also say that they have the best people, the best quality, the most experience, and those sorts of things. So I'm not saying that they don't exist inside the business. I'm just saying in terms of a marketing tool to attract new customers, they have no competitive value. So really being willing to surrender some belief systems around how good the business is and being able to independently examine the fact base around the market size, around customer buying behaviour, around the numbers within the segments and where the opportunity might sit, and then the things that the business needs to focus on to unpick those things. And what that often does is it often challenges people's personal preferences. They go, well, I really like that market, or this is a product that we've put a lot of R&D into, so I don't want to give it up so easily. And we then we're obligated to say, well, that's okay if you want to do that, as long as you understand that that's an experiment with your money and it's a distraction from enterprise value. And if that's how you want to spend management headspace, then that's a decision that only you can make. You're the owner of the business. But if our agreement is to drive enterprise value, that needs to go. So one of the takeaways I think on this is that that is not for the faint-hearted. This is a process that the numbers will be the numbers, and if you genuinely want to maximise enterprise value, you sometimes need to be willing to give up things that you thought to be true. You need to be willing to hear things that you might not like hearing, but also if you're prepared to do the things that the data produces, that you're going to get a benefit that is what you probably set out in the business for in the first place.
And so there's a number of things I want to get back to. The very first thing is in previous discussions, you've said to me that you don't necessarily, you're not really interested in working with the lifestyle businesses. You're looking at working with really driven businesses. Can we dive into that a little bit? Do you feel that these strategies are not as applicable to lifestyle businesses because they require a lot of discipline and attention? I don't know, I'm putting words into your mouth here, but what's the division in your mind, the distinction that makes this something that really isn't applicable in your mind to lifestyle businesses?
Sure.
Or someone harder to work with, perhaps that's what was in your mind.
Yeah, sure. Look, first of all, like from my perspective, a business owner is entitled to do whatever they want with their business. It's absolutely their business and it's their call. And many people are incredibly happy to take a couple of $100,000 a year out of the business and, enjoy their weekends with their family and a couple of overseas trips. And they don't really want any more than that. So that's not a great fit for us in terms of what we do, because we would want to drive that business harder than the owner would. Yeah. And we would demand things off the owner that they probably don't want to do. So,
so what like? Give me an example.
Well, for example, if one of those, in fact, it's a recent example, we're working with an organisation in Melbourne where there was an opportunity to sell the business, and the offer that was on the table was eye-wateringly good, where we were of the view that they should take the offer, and our modelling on that business over the next 3 to 5 years is that some new complexity would come into that business that would make it less attractive to own it. So selling it's a good idea. And after some discussion with the business owner, they kind of said, I'm happy just doing what I'm doing. I don't really want to stop doing this, so I don't want to. So we couldn't really do any more for them because they actually kind of built a lifestyle into their business, and they're entitled to that. That's completely fine. The other one would be around, pet projects and these sorts of things. It might be a product, it might be sunk cost in some geographic expansion that they've done that the analysis might say that's never going to work. So you just need to pull out of that, and those people, you need to close that office, for example. I don't really want to do that. Those sorts of things where it's personal, they don't really work in the sort of work that we do.
And look, the reason that I ask is because for many people who've chosen a lifestyle business, whether they recognise that that's what they've chosen or not, often won't necessarily understand the consequences to sale value at the end of the day. And this ties back to, I think, this discussion that we had right in the beginning of the this episode where we were talking about the difference between growing a business and growing a business understanding the concept of enterprise value and sale value at the end of the day. So is there always, I just want to be clear for business owners who are listening to this podcast, what the consequences are of a lifestyle business, where that comes in, and is it possible to have your cake and eat it too? Is there a way without sacrificing, because a lifestyle business, I guess, in and of itself is referring to a business that is run within the confines of the owner doing what they want when they want, perhaps with a little bit less focus on the discipline that might be required to build really strong value at exit.
Look, great question. The compelling reasons, I think, are there's a couple, and one of them is that the number of privately owned businesses that are going to change hands in the next 10 to 15 years is a staggeringly high number in Australia. 80% of those businesses do not have an exit plan. They have got no formal plan whatsoever on how to exit that business and how to extract the value. This is the most compelling one in my mind, and I will need to clarify the numbers, but just in broad terms, something like 60% of business owners over the age of 55 will be required in the next 5 years to either stop working in their business or substantially step back from managing their business because of a health issue of either their own or of a loved one.
Wow.
So it's an extraordinary number. So we've worked with many businesses where the choice of when to exit was not of the owner's making. And there are some really sort of confronting examples. We had a terrific client in Melbourne who built a business up over 20 plus years, and had never really put the right amount of effort into the exit planning, and had a massive heart attack, survived the heart attack, and was told by their doctor that if they stepped foot back into their business that they would be dead within 6 months.
Wow.
Didn't have, so the medical recommendation was you cannot go back and run your business. So from a very frail state, this person then had to think about, how do I employ management in the business? How do I maintain the standards? How do I unlock the IP that sits inside my head? And how do I sort of operationalize that into the business? So that deadline or that decision was taken out of the hands of the owner. And we don't say that to be scaremongers. We're in no way trying to be fearmongers around this. It's just that's just the reality. The numbers are that, that something can interfere with your plans and your timing, and it may not be your own. So our view is that if you build to that today, and you can own the business right up until the end, we don't mind. We actually don't care so much whether or not you choose to exit or not. You can have a lifestyle business, but it would be our view that you run it as if you intend to sell it for two reasons. One is you'll be running a materially better business. It'll be more profitable. It'll be more enjoyable. It'll have a better brand. You'll have a good employee value proposition. People want to come and work for you. There's a whole bunch of really good reasons why you should run it that efficiently. But importantly, if you make a decision to sell, you'll maximize your enterprise value. And if that decision is unfortunately made for you because of health or other circumstances, you are still making sure that you are maximizing the value of that asset, which you've probably spent decades building. And you and I have spoken about this before, that it's our very clear view that every owner deserves their payday.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, look, fabulous, Michael. I just want to say a massive thank you for coming on to the Deal Room podcast today. I'd actually like to have you back again and to really dig into the mistakes that business owners make when they're selling their business, and also the steps to maximising enterprise value, because I think that will be a really useful discussion for us to step through. But until then, I guess we've finished off for today, but maybe before we leave, can you just give us a bit of a background about EvettField? So where you are right now, what you're doing, and who you're working with at the moment.
Sure. We typically, as you know, work with mid-sized B2B organisations, and that can be across a range of categories. We have clients in agriculture, mining, defence, construction. Very often the businesses that we work with are businesses that you might not think about. So they might be, doing security bollards for shopping centres or something, and you think, oh, well, of course, somebody runs that business. So typically, typically they're industrial, they're manufacturing, they're kind of out of mind, out of sight, and they're the criteria that we talked about earlier. Committed leadership team, aggressive growth target, and a deadline. That's an ideal client for us.
Yeah, absolutely wonderful. And how do you work with clients? I think in the past we've discussed about brand and market positioning in order to drive top line revenue. But what does that mean functionally, practically?
Sure. The first part really is getting a genuine handle on what the current market position is, and that needs to be triangulated against what is their true organisational capability, not what they think it is or not what they say it is, but genuinely what is their organisational superpower. Secondly, understanding markets, customers and segments, so really defining what customers are looking for and where those hot spots are in the market where greater revenue is available. And then the third piece around that is it would be great if we could just take our superpower and deliver it to customers who wanted it, but we need to do that in that competitive cauldron of competitive tension. There's so the third part is really understanding, well, who are the competitors and to what extent can they damage you in your attempts to service those customers and achieve your revenue objectives.
Brilliant. Okay, wonderful. Well, look, Michael, I'm really excited to have you back on the show again so that we can drill into some of these mistakes and then some of these really concrete steps to maximising enterprise value. But until then, if our listeners are looking to connect with you, how do they do that?
They can find me on LinkedIn. Just search Michael Field on LinkedIn, or go to our website, www.EvettField, that's EvettField.com, and all of our contact details are on there.
Brilliant. Okay, wonderful. And of course, as always, if you are running along the beach as you are listening to us today, or on your commute into work, then have no fear. Don't cause a traffic accident by trying to write that down. It's in the show notes, and we'll also link to it from our website. Well, Michael, just wanted to say a massive thank you, and I'm looking forward to having you back.
Thanks so much. Really appreciate the opportunity.
Well, that's it for this episode of the Deal Room podcast with Michael Field from the consulting practice EvettField Partners, where we really honed in on that topic of driving enterprise value and looked at competitive strategies, the key to unlocking revenue, profit and market share growth, and thereby increasing enterprise value at the end of the day. Well, look, I hope you found this episode interesting. And of course, if you'd like more information about the topic or to find out how to make contact with Michael or EvettField Partners, then just head over to our website at thedealroompodcast.com. There you'll be able to find details of how to contact Michael, and you'll also be able to find details of how to contact our lawyers at Aspect Legal if you or your clients would like to discuss any legal aspects or of sales or acquisitions. We have a range of services to help guide businesses through the sales and acquisitions process and work with clients both big and small and have different types of services depending on size and complexity. So don't hesitate to book an appointment if you want to find out how we might be able to assist. And finally, if you enjoyed what you heard today, then please pop over to iTunes and leave us a review. Well, that's it. Thanks again for listening in. You've been listening to Joanna Oakey and the Deal Room podcast, proudly brought to you by our commercial legal practice, Aspect Legal. See you next time. Aspect Legal has a number of great services that help businesses prepare for a sale or acquisition, to help them prepare in advance and to get transaction ready. We've also got a range of services to help guide businesses through the sale and acquisitions process. We work with clients both big and small and have different types of services depending on size and complexity. We provide a free consultation to discuss your proposed sale or acquisition. So see our show notes on how to book a time to speak with us, or head over to our website at aspectlegal.com.au.
Ladies and gentlemen.
That will conclude this evening's entertainment.
Thanks for listening to the Deal Room Podcast. To find out more about this episode and other episodes in the series, check out the show notes or head over to our website at thedealroompodcast.com.au.